Welcome to Dual Podcast Empire's Profits on Air Workspace Session Series, and I am Majesty AliNICOLE WOW, and I am back again with the awesome, wonderful, delightful Queen Brenda Lynn, and it's been so exciting having her in this workspace session format so that we can do the building process around the duality of podcast empires and building profitability, because this is about being able to have a solo and guest featured podcast for your business. Brenda Lynn, of course, thank you for being here again.
Yeah, always enjoy these sessions. So
yes, great.
yeah, excited to move forward with this.
Same here. I am excited too. And so for those of you just joining us for this series, we've been building upon sort of brick by brick, laying a foundation. And this is more of kind of a intensive, if you will, where Brenda Lynn, we have discussion and then take a break, and she does her assignment, so to speak, and then we come right back and then be able to share the next building aspect of what's taking place as her new podcast empire for duality profits is building. And so, as I mentioned in each segment, that there's going to be a link to the actual training in the description, and the training is one that Brenda Lynn has listened to, and that's what we're building upon here in terms of what her takeaways were and how she wants to move forward with building a podcast for business using the dual podcast empire profits model. So Brenda Lynn, looking forward to what will come about in this particular session.
Yeah.
So the last session, we were talking about the importance of branding and starting to explore what that could look like for your platform. And then I gave you an assignment to read some of the article in terms of what I focus on about the importance of having a brand that will work for podcasting versus just a brand that maybe is working in your business. And so we'll start talking about those dynamics during this particular part of the session. I would really love to hear your thoughts about what you read, and then we can start from there.
Well, it was brilliant, and it tied together a lot of the work that we have done in the past, putting my business through that metamorphosis and
Yes.
putting it up on the shelf, and got a brand that was working, and then I think I outgrew it.
Yes, right.
I went through my own personal metamorphosis, and all of a sudden the old branding of that company didn't work for me, and or the whole format in general. What I liked with this article was it brought all of that back, and you talked about a brand working for a business but maybe not for a podcast. That's not something that I ever really considered. I just thought if it's working here, it's going to work there.
Right. And most people do think that, even believe it or not, even some podcast experts or so that teach people how to leverage podcasting for business, a lot of them don't even know how to make those distinctions. They think, okay, well, I'm going to teach people how to podcast for business, and not understanding that there are some different dynamics. So what I want to share, go ahead.
That was a real key point for me right at the beginning of the article, was having gone through the metamorphosis myself, and seeing how I no longer, my business and me no longer fit together until I allowed it to go through its metamorphosis. So this really pulled all of that experience in, and I went, it was just a big aha.
Absolutely. Yes. And that's so great. And the thing about it, what I'm so excited about with you is because you actually haven't done a podcast for your business, that you don't actually have to go through the now or rebranding for the podcast. All those things you can really start from the evolutionary place, having gone through your own personal metamorphosis, your company's metamorphosis, and now coming to this type of initiative where holistically, all of it can shine. And that's the unique part of the branding expression, which is, as you know, what I teach instead of traditional branding. I teach branding expression. And I want to reference the article, which I'll have the link to this in the description for those listening. The article is called, "Do You Actually Have a Business Brand That Will Work for Podcasting? How to Know When It's Time to Rebrand and Relaunch Your Business in Podcast." Now, this particular article serves anyone at any different level, but people who have actually been in podcasting, this really benefits them in terms of knowing when to make the shifts in case they haven't had the best experience with trying to podcast for business. This is why it's important those who are starting to podcast really understand fundamentally what's going to be required, what's going to be really chief cornerstones. And so that's why Brenda Lynn is getting the right education in terms of the podcasting initiative and understanding, yeah, there's some things we have to consider. She mentioned she would have never even thought about that. And most experts don't. Go ahead, Brenda.
A lot of people that have attempted to launch podcasts, and it was kind of an epic fail for them because they didn't consider a lot of these things. And that industry is growing in leaps and bounds. I can't tell you how many people I know that listen to podcasts all day long. Whether they're doing laundry or they're working on something for their business or they're doing dishes, like there's always something on and they're listening to podcasts continually. And there's so much wisdom that comes through those podcasts that I really think it's a great strategy for whether you're a business, whether you're a solopreneur, everybody who thinks that they can make an impact for other people, because all of this wisdom needs to come together. In this new world, we need to collaborate. We need to bring the wisdom together because that's where it's really going to explode into the benefit for humanity.
Absolutely. I agree. Of course, I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And it's something that I want to share. And I mentioned this in the first segment that, Brenda Lynn does have a background with podcasting in terms of being a part of podcasting platforms. And we've done podcast series together. And also we have done a number of conversational podcast style training products together. So she's very familiar in terms of the flow of podcasting and conversating and interviewing, doing all those. But this particular initiative is her actually having her own branded podcast. And when I say branded, meaning it's her, where it's her podcast and not, she's been invited to do this. She's launching this initiative on a podcast platform and doing it outside of some YouTube stuff that she's done. So this is what makes this exciting.
Very exciting. And
yeah.
I participated on summits and podcasts and was as an invited guest.
Right.
And as I said in one of the previous sessions, I often entertained, I've got so much wisdom to share. I've got such a community with wisdom in all different areas that I'd love to provide a vehicle for them to bring this out to the world. But it just never seemed to come together for me.
Right. And now this is the perfect time. Yeah, this is the perfect time, because under what you were doing previously, you would have already had to start kind of rebranding. And so
my procrastinating paid off finally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And they position you for more power and profitability so that you can do this the right way. And when I say the right way, because I know sometimes people think that, well, there's not really a right or wrong way. You just have to find your own way. Well, yes and no. There are better ways to do things, but when it comes to podcasting for business, there actually are wrong ways to do it.
People that say that, I don't know where they're coming from, because there are formats that are proven to work and there's formats that are proven to not work. So if you want to be profitable, if you want this to expand the business, and if you want to be in service to humanity, if you really have a desire to get your message out because you think it's going to have a profound impact for people, there is a right way to do that.
You are absolutely right. You are absolutely right. And so what we'll do now is start to jump in to looking at how we get your podcast, your duo podcast off the ground.
Okay.
And in the most simplified ways, to get started. We talked a little bit about this in the last session, but this part of the session, again, now we're going to start really kind of getting our hands in the clay. So because you've read about the branding aspect and the importance of branding, and I know we talked about possibly leveraging your name for the podcast or so. But what are you thinking and sensing initially? What do you feel would represent what you want to do right now? Go ahead.
Yeah, and I have to thank you for that piece of wisdom that came out in the previous session, because you really hit the nail on the head when we talked about me having multiple companies and multiple initiatives, and using one of those names would eliminate the other one from being relevant to it. They all fall under me. So having a brand expression of me, that would then incorporate the wisdom from both of the companies, the active companies that I have going now, and the networks that, because they're separate networks, because they're separate topics, the networks that come through those would all feed into a brand that was around me personally, rather than one of my business entities.
Absolutely. And then because you have different products and you have multiple platforms, see, again, that's a cohesive experience. And a business dynamics in terms of one company focus would definitely be limited because of what you bring to the table. So you have your main training hub companies, and then again, your Amazon platform, and then you have other sub platforms. So you can showcase a variety of different aspects. And the beautiful thing about this is that, using Linktree, which is extremely beneficial, is that within your podcast descriptions, you can include your Linktree link, because that's going to have the multi-level layers of your companies and your Amazon page, and then also your podcast, or different, if you have different podcast platforms, your YouTube channel, those can showcase that. And so doing it under this format is a very easy way for you to leverage the multidimensionalism of who you are, like I said, the prism of who you are, because you are a powerful leader, powerful influencer, someone who is constantly looking to connect, your voice and message to your audience. That's why I mentioned that in terms of your podcast can have your name, but if you want to have some type of expression with it, or to add to it, you can, and that can bring more of an interest. Like if it's leading with Brenda Lynn, or Brenda Lynn, well, maybe you don't want to call it Brenda Lynn leadership or so, but just if you
that limits again to, although I believe everybody in the world is a leader.
Yes.
Whether you're
a mother or
that serves her kids day in and day out, or whether you're in the corporate realm or whatever. But people have a limited thing. What I came up with is two things. I think one of them you might have mentioned on there is the Brenda Lynn experience and Brenda Lynn universe.
Yes. I like the Brenda Lynn experience too. Yeah. I like them both, of course.
I like them both. I've played with some other ones, but I think that maybe you might have mentioned Brenda Lynn universe.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah, and that went so yeah, so one of those two would be what I would brand it around.
Okay, great. All right. So yeah, I love it. Yeah. And the thing about it is, can it change? It absolutely can change, but we want something initially that it starts with. And so also something I'm going to recommend to others, when you start your podcast or so, you don't actually have to announce the podcast name. If the podcast title is there and then you have the title of the segment or so, I'll give an example. Because I do a lot of cross-branded podcasting and repurposing, a lot of times I will start my session, with, welcome, to this segment. Looking forward to being with you. I'm going to jump right into today's topic. Now, the reason why I do that and I don't announce what the podcast name is because I might plan to use that somewhere else.
Okay.
And if I rebrand the podcast at any point, I did not announce it in that name.
But you can also introduce it under your name. I'm AliNICOLE WOW.
Well, yes, because when I come on, I introduce myself, right? And so just like with you, if you are, welcoming your guests, but you don't necessarily want to say this is Brenda Lynn's universe, just thank you for joining me for today's segment. I'm your host, Brenda Lynn, and today we're going to be talking about yada, 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 yada. So that's just considerations, all right? Everything that I'm saying are just considerations, not saying that's the best way to do it. You need to do it like that. Again, everybody's business is different. But that is a way that if you, especially in the beginning, if you're not wanting to button down on a name yet, you can title the podcast platform as that being the name, but your segments, you don't actually have to introduce that in case you change it up. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. That's great.
All right. So, so
I like the Brenda Lynn experience. I think that's what I would go with.
Okay. So landing with the Brenda Lynn experience. Yes. And so within that experience, obviously, then we have what the description is in terms of what that entails. The Brenda Lynn experience obviously carries a holistic leadership approach to life and da 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 da. I'm just mocking it up here. Of course, you'll come up with what that description is, but here are the pros. I don't even say the cons in a sense. If you're not known as a brand by name in a certain sect or so, then you do have to build that platform in terms of what is the experience, right? So that's where the description will tell that, and then topics that you choose, topics that you select, right?
Yeah.
So when building for profitability, I often coach people and tell them, you need to start with product building series. Of course, have series that are segments that you are adding value for sure, but you want to be able to put in a strong foundation. So it's not so much of focusing on building an audience yet at this point. It's getting in some signature key segments, and yes, sharing those for sure. But you want the strong profitability, because out the gate, it's going to be you and what your brand represents, right? Building the know, like, and trust factor, which that article that you read actually, talks about that, and why it's best to kind of start with having either product series or podcast. Actually, you know what, Brenda Lynn? I'm going to read that little part. It's just a short little excerpt here. A section is called "Why Start with Podcast Series and Podcast Products." All right. And it reads as such. All right. One of the main reasons for doing this is because you will see how your brand and business will evolve, and what you were providing isn't going to be part of the evolution of your next level, or at least not in the format that you've been leveraging. Also, this gives you an opportunity to test your authority in the eyes of an audience, to know if you've built up enough momentum in the know, like, and trust department for others to buy from you with your lower hanging fruit and easy yes offers like products and publications. You need to see if you can revenue-tize the acorn concept at some basic level before going all in. So let me give a little clarity to that. I use an analogy in terms of the acorn growing into the oak tree, and the oak tree is more of the empire. I always mention to people that when you get an idea about something, it's a seed of conception, meaning that's the acorn, but it's not really the empire. but it contains the encoding of the empire. So you want to crack it open and start the process so we can see what evolves. So the reason why branding initially is very important in this regards, and Brenda Lynn choosing really the best type of branding to go with in terms of what represents her, is because she's talking about an experience which is evolutionary. So when she starts out, she's starting to build up the know, like, and trust. She's introducing herself to the podcast world, to the audience, introducing her experience, which is multi-layered. And so when we're talking about business, instead of focusing more on, okay, I'm going to put my high-end offers out there, some of her first initial segments would need to focus on introducing lower hanging fruit types of products, leading people into articles and different things that they can learn more about her brand. And so if she does some type of series, like she has a variety of different focuses. So maybe she considers, let me do a series on finance. And maybe that's just a 2 to 3 part segment or so. And then maybe she does a series on her chakra work, right? And so these are just considerations, for individuals when jumpstarting this podcasting initiative. I see Brenda Lynn's like looking like, is that the light bulb going on? You're thinking, what's it's like a lot, like see it in your eyes, like, oh, okay.
I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, wow, I could pull this piece of my universe in, and this piece,
absolutely,
this piece, and this piece would lead into that piece. And I've never really seen, to some degree, I've seen the relationship between the companies because they come from my heart. But just this listening to you talking, my mind's clicking away going,
I can see it.
Wow, the finance really is related to the emotional intelligence, and the finance is related to chakras, and all of these different pieces that can just come in as part of that Brenda Lynn experience.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. And two, thinking outside of just your companies. And that's something I want business owners, solo entrepreneurs to think about. When you are bringing yourself to the table, it's not just about you are the business. You often hear me say this, Brenda Lynn, that my life is my niche, and I'm in the business of being fully me. So whether it is a company or a product, myself as the brand, I come to the table, right? So I don't have to be boxed into what my offerings and opportunities are. They're there for sure. But when you show up in this brand expression, this unique way, you're here to serve. So you can create on demand, you can customize, but when you do have targeted segments, which you do need to have some of those, a great majority of those, where it is a topic that you are focused on and you do have some type of offerings, but can you cross promote in those yes, you can definitely do that. We're just like you said, okay, well, the finances, are related to the chakras. They're this. So if, let's say that you did do something around personal finance or personal and professional finance, then you could do a series on that then could talk about emotional intelligence in terms of, your financial, the benefits of knowing about emotional intelligence as it relates to personal finance. You could talk about the energy body as it relates to finance, right? So
and the vibration of what you're talking, the prosperity piece of it, and
you have books around that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you could do some type of series that maybe does have a core theme or a core focus, or here's something that I recommend a lot in writing, and you're familiar with this, especially with the work that we've done with publishing, is when you think about Chicken Soup for the Soul. They have that concept where it is about inspiration and comfort for others, but they have different segments, different niche markets that they focus on.
Yeah.
So let's say that you did something that is on financial empowerment or so. It could be financial empowerment for business leaders, or financial empowerment, for well-being or financial wellness, or however. You could actually have one core theme and then address it to a specific audience. So a specific interest group. So if it was something on finance, then maybe you are focusing again for just personal finance in general. And then maybe there's a segment where you actually are focused on leadership or business leaders or women or moms or however. So there's a variety of ways that you can do that. And that's ways to have easy segments that you can have a core topic of a series, have the focus, and address specific audiences. So that way, people don't necessarily have to listen to like the entire series. It's like a series that builds upon each other. It's a series that you can do where it's a core topic, but you are addressing different markets for that. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
absolutely.
Yeah. And then you have products for those areas, but then there's also the opportunity then to also say, if you want to explore this on another level, then I'm available for X, Y, and Z, and the information is in the description to learn about that. So, yeah, so those are just different ways. So Brenda Lynn, it's the Brenda Lynn experience. So
That is feeling good.
isn't that feeling good? Yes, because within that is, your universe. It is all these different things, but you are bringing an experience to them, and that's more evolutionary in terms of that's something that can continue to evolve. And then when people come into the Brenda Lynn experience, yes, you can still, of course, have guests because they are part of your experience. Your network is
Yeah,
part of your
absolutely. Yeah.
experience. And that's something within the description that you can flesh out in terms of here's what this experience provides, segments where you're sharing of your wealth of wisdom and knowledge from the years and background in certain areas. And then also too, in how you also invite other guests on the platform to, share their wisdom and knowledge too. So, so let's look at the first, like what's your first 3 to 5 segments. So like your first segment could be an intro segment that is kind of, I don't necessarily want to say introducing the platform. I mean, you could do that, but if you don't want to quite name it in a sense, you can do a segment. You talk about the truth of you or so. You could definitely open up with a segment around that. And then also just mention that you have resources in the description that help people to find those different levels of what's true for them now or so. These are just, listening audience, I'm throwing things out here just in terms of to expand her own awareness around what she has. It's not trying to direct her to do it that way. It's just putting just considerations, and that's things I want you to think about too, in terms of if you don't want to jump right into just starting to name the platform and call it this, then which hers is very flexible because she could definitely, go with that and open up with that. That's not a problem. But for those of you, maybe you're not sure yet, then, pick a topic that what you think represents you out the gate in terms of the experience that you want to provide. All right. And again, because we're talking about business, you want to start building up the know, like, and trust. So you don't necessarily have to jump in just initially talking about, I have all these offers. You create some type of core theme, but then you let people know, invite them into this to the description so they can learn more about what is this encounter, what is this experience. And in Brenda Lynn's case, if she sets it up with a powerful topic and then leads them in, then they can start to learn about that. That's building know, like, and trust, the know, like, and trust factor too. So Brenda Lynn, what we'll do is we'll close out here, and then we will resume to start actually crafting out some of the actual segments and products that you can include and incorporate, and looking at maybe you are doing a series or so, and then we'll start looking at when you start actually bringing guests in. How does that sound?
That sounds awesome.
Okay, well, wonderful. All right. So you want to have any closing out word or so before we close this segment, or should we just pick back up with the next one?
I think just pick up with the next one. My brain is going, and you probably see me scattered, and I'm writing notes here, writing notes there, because there's so much coming in from different.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I need to
absolutely.
consolidate those and have a more coherent session on the next one.
Okay, awesome. Well, we will be back with you soon. Check the description for the articles and also the previous trainings, sessions, and you can explore other resources there. So we'll be back with you soon.